All right, peace and much love. Happy Hip Hop Appreciation Week 2022 to my nobility out there, to the entire hip hop nation and the worldwide community of like-minded individuals that we represent across all time, across all space, to all the ancestors here now with us in this place. We want to thank you with eternal gratitude and appreciation for all that you've done for us. For all that you've done for us. You know, without those who've gone before us, we wouldn't be here. And even deeper than the lives they lived, it's the principles that they lived their lives by. It's the discoveries that they made in their lifetimes. It's the stand that they made. It's the words that they spoke, like I have a dream. So let us begin Hip Hop Appreciation Week with a true appreciation for our ancestors, for those who went before us, those who are living and those who are living in the spirit realm exclusively. So grateful. You know, this week's message from the Minista is just simple. Appreciation is love. Appreciation is love. Because when we love something and something loves us, we appreciate it and it appreciates us. And as we read tonight, we're going to read the definitions again. I read these definitions every year for the word appreciate and appreciation. And when we really get down to it, it's a way of adding value to something. And when we add value, we shout our ancestors out. Not only do we add value to them, but we add value to ourselves as well. And when we come out and we acknowledge those who came before us, not only do we add value to them, but they add value to us. And so when we come out, we say, yo, Hip Hop Appreciation Week, this is the week that we show appreciation to hip hop. Well, we are appreciating and adding value, real value, spiritual value, character value to hip hop. And hip hop is adding that value back to us. And there's something real that's happening. The word is being made manifest. The word comes into the flesh and is spoken out of the sound vibration that only this water body could create in this dimension. And when we say we appreciate hip hop and hip hop appreciates us, we start growing, we start developing, we start being through the act of preservation, because appreciation is preservation. The Temple of Hip Hop, we're a hip hop ministry, archive, school, and society, a hip hop preservation society. And what we're preserving is not the artifacts, although those are important. We're not just preserving the turntables of Cool DJ Herc. Or we're not just preserving the Adidas worn by Run DMC when they performed at Madison Square Garden. And those are important things to preserve. But what we're preserving, what we're talking about here, is the original intention of hip hop. What we're talking about here is the original spirit of hip hop and the preservation of the spirit that's been with us long before we even called it hip hop in its modern day terms and usage. This consciousness, this idea, this movement of intelligent movement, hipping and hopping its way through every civilization, through every culture, through every religion. And then finding us in the space, well, finding those kids in the Bronx in the space, and then growing out through New York from there, and then out into the whole earth, finding people who aren't fitting in their communities, or finding people who are just aware of something deeper going in life, that the problems of the world, we've kind of already found our way out of those, at least as far as philosophy and theory and knowing goes. And for example, like hip hop is a multicultural people. It's a space where all these different cultures come together and make a heterogeneous culture, which means a new culture. So we come together from all these different walks of life, these different groups of people, yet we have one thing in common, and that's hip hop. But if we don't respect those who came before us, if we don't show the appreciation to those who came before us, then we deserve what we get. But when we do show the appreciation to those who came before us, then we're actually building something. We're actually creating something. We're actually laying the foundation. And what's wonderful about this foundation is I often compare it to a garden, as a gardener myself. A lot of the greatest gardens of the world were not really appreciated. Well, they were not the fullness of the bounty of the garden. Wasn't even witnessed in the physical by those who actually physically planted the garden. Trees that would take time, groves that would take time, certain soils that had to be given nutrients to. So certain plants had, like hemp has to, if you have an arid area without any nutrition in the ground, you can plant hemp into the earth, let it grow for a full season and die. Not only does it clean the garbage out of the dirt, but it also replenishes the nutrients of that dirt. So 2, 3, 4 seasons of planting hemp, not even to be harvested, just to give the earth nutrition in certain arid areas. Knowing how to do the rain dance. Knowing how to call forth rain when it's needed. This is what our ancestors knew about planting gardens. And what they would do is they would build the community and then build the garden and then build that network. And then the elders with the knowledge of those early gardens would pass on. And then they would inhabit the garden in spirit. In spirit. Their breath would be one with the oxygen that the plants are producing. And so in that analogy of a garden, I want to take this time to say that as we're growing hip-hop as a culture, what we're really growing and what we're really, really, really working towards is 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, 500 years from now, 1,000, 15, 2,000, where we don't even use those numbers anymore. There's a new language being born, a new sight being born, a new civilization being born. And really, it's just being reawoken. It's like we've been asleep to who we really are. Now, this is an advanced lesson for those with the sight to see. It's obvious. A lot of people might hear this and be like, oh, that's like how does that even work? Well, I'll show you something. I thought it was interesting tonight. I came up here and I saw, Hip Hop Appreciation Week, HHAW 2022, May. And on May 15th, Sunday, whose birthday is it? Melly Mel's. On Monday, May 16th, whose birthday is it? Love Bug Starsky's. And you can look at the calendar and look at those dates. If you don't have a calendar, order one here. Melly Mel? For me, I was just like, wow, this is dope. Melly Mel, right? Melly Mel was my first favorite MC I ever heard. When I heard the Beat Street Breakdown and of course, the message, it was like I was hearing lyrics and I was hearing ideas as a young kid. I mean, a kid. I was, 13, 14? Hearing these lyrics, go back and read the lyrics. Do I have it here? Yeah. You know what? Let's do this. Yes, indeed. This is fun. This is a freestyle tonight. I got some notes, but really this is a freestyle tonight. I just wanted to talk about how much I appreciate hip hop and how much I know hip hop appreciates me and how much we all appreciate hip hop and how much hip hop all appreciates us. And so it's funny, Melly Mel, my first favorite MC, one of the greatest to ever touch the mic. This is a book called There's a God on the Mic by Kool Moe Dee. The 50 greatest MCs of all time, according to Kool Moe Dee. Let's see, when was this book? This book's about 13 years old, 14 years old. Let's see. What year was this? 2013. No, 2003, I'm bugging. 2003 this came out, so 19 years ago. And you can see here, it's got just these beautiful pictures by Ernie Penacoli. Each picture is by Ernie Penacoli. There's Exhibit there. That was Common, the first one we saw. Pharoah Monch. Let's see, who do we got? Of course, we got Busta Rhymes in there. We're just going random. Method Man, M-E-T-H-O-D, man. You know, he got that melody, Method Man, M-E-T-H-O-D, man, from an old Hall & Oates song. Tretch. Of course, the B.I.G. His birthday's the last day of Hip Hop Appreciation Week this year, Notorious B.I.G. Got an autograph to Zin from Grandmaster Caz, the grandest of them all. There's Kumo D, who wrote the book. Of course, we got the Teacher KRS-One. Should have been #1 on here, but hey, it's Kumo D, wrote the book. Not me. Rakim at #2 they had Teacher at #3, Rakim at 2, and they had Melly Mel at #1. But you know, this is the era this is Kumo D's era right here. But I wanted to read, I'll put them up here on the screen. Let's read a couple of Melly Mel's verses here, all right? You know, the first one is from The Message, and this is so deep. Like, I want you to overstand for a moment while we're reading this. Interesting, it's also on page 333. While we're reading this, I go back in time from when I heard this rhyme. What was on the radio back in 83, 84? You know, when you really go back in time, what was the consciousness of people's mindset at the time? And this song wasn't popular. Well, it was popular on the radio, but we would record songs onto cassettes off the radio. So it was lucky if you had a copy of The Message from a radio recording onto a cassette tape. And so this song right here, though, I never heard any poetry like this before. I had never heard any lyrics like this before. I was always a fan of music, but I was just learning to discover music. And the images in here, I would say really actually, if you read my own lyrics or you study Zin Uru's lyrics, they're actually very influenced by Melly Mel. So on The Message, he says, "A child is born with no state of mind, blind to the ways of mankind. God is smiling on you, but he's frowning too, because only God knows what you'll go through. You're growing in the ghetto in the second rate, and your eyes will sing a song, deep hate. The places you play and where you stay look like one great big alleyway. You'll admire all the number book rakers, thugs, pimps, and pushers, and the big money makers. Driving big cars, spending 20s and 10s, and you'll want to grow up to be just like them. Smugglers, scramblers, burglars, gamblers, pickpockets, peddlers, even panhandlers. You say, I'm cool, huh? I ain't no fool. But then you wind up dropping out of high school. Now you're unemployed and non-void, walking around like your pretty boy Floyd. Turned stick-up kid, but look what you done did. Got sent up for an 8-year bid. Now your manhood is took and you're a Maytag. Spent the next 2 years as an undercover fag, being used and abused and served like hell, till one day you was found hung dead in a cell. It was plain to see that your life was lost. You was cold and your body swung back and forth. But now your eyes sing that sad, sad song of how you lived so fast and how you died so young. Now, those lyrics to me, now I see this as where I was growing up, we had no idea what was going on around the world, you know. I grew up in what I call the suburban wasteland of Antioch, California. We were a feeder town. Everybody worked outside the city to feed the larger developed cities like San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley. We were just like stuck out in the middle of nowhere like on the outskirts of the Bay Area. And people who could not afford to work where they lived, so they had to venture outside of the city to find employment through commuting an hour and a half, 2 hours a day into the bigger cities. And it was a very interesting way because, when you hear a song like The Message from Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and you hear something like this first line, "A child is born with no state of mind, blind to the ways of mankind. God is smiling on you, but he's frowning too, because only God knows what you'll go through." Like, there was nothing I ever heard that was as deep as that line at that time. And it pointed this idea, and if you really look at what Melly Mel's saying here, this is the message of conscious hip hop. This is the warning to the streets. This is the same warning that as I got older and my friends started doing whatever trouble and illegal shit that they were doing, and once I started walking in different circles as I got older and started driving around in my car, and I started hanging out with criminals and crooks and all kind of folk, it wasn't my religious beliefs. It was the ideas put forth in hip hop of the warnings of what a criminal life could look like. And this is where Melly Mel, to me, was such a conscious MC early on. Because he's warning everybody. And even this part right here, he's talking about you want to grow up to be just like the money makers, driving big cars, spending 20s and 10s. He said the smugglers, the scramblers, the burglars, the gamblers, the pickpocket peddlers, and even the panhandlers. He's saying he's noticing the kids in the hood are even looking at the panhandlers as a future, right? And that same mentality, when you get that mentality young, you work harder, you have jobs, you find a way to get money whatever you can, and you want to stay out of trouble. That's what Melly Mel is saying right here. And he's saying at the end, the life will go by so fast, and you got to really look at where your life is going in the future. And then the second one is in the movie Beat Street. And the Beat Street breakdown. This is the second verse. Listen to the first verse. He said, in the first verse, I'm not going to put it up here because I don't have it in front of me and I don't remember all the lyrics off the top of my head. But in the first verse, he talks about, they say there's no thump in the hallowed halls, so my notebook turns into a bic wall. And that reminded me of me as a kid, okay? My notebook turned into a bic wall. I didn't have a brick wall to go do graffiti on. But I learned graffiti around the same time I was learning these songs from a kid who moved up from Los Angeles and taught me how to draw the fat letters and taught me how to draw the graffiti characters. And that was my first taste of popularity. I was a very shy kid, but when other kids could see me draw graffiti art specifically, they started wanting me to draw their name, color their name. Girls started talking to me. They wanted me to draw characters. I remember one girl gave me $15 to draw a full color Madonna and then write her name Madonna, it's like some dope lettering. And so that was huge for me. That was big money. I was like, whoa. And so my notebook was a bic wall, a bic being a pen, And so I used to sit there and my notebooks, I'd even turn in homework with drawings on it. And for some reason, most of my teachers, most of them didn't care. I'd put little cartoons in the corner of my homework. I'd draw my name, I'd draw whatever, And it was that was my escape from the larger world, was hip hop. And not just hip hop, but music. Back then, kids was breaking at our school to Michael Jackson. And so to me, Thriller, in my mind as a kid, is a rap album, right? Now, I don't say that now. Of course, it's Thriller, it's pop rock, it's Michael Jackson, the king. But Michael Jackson, like when kids were breaking, they were doing moonwalking and the wave. Like this was our school out in the suburban wastelands of the Bay Area. And so while we was skating, we was listening to Beastie Boys and Run DMC and Public Enemy and Boogie Down Productions on our skateboards as little white kids in the suburbs, you know. And this one right here, though, this right here is so prophetic and so far ahead of its time. There are very few artists that have ever matched this rhyme skill. I mean, very few. And in my opinion, probably the only two that I've ever read rhymes from that match this skill is, of course, the Teacher and Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill's rhyme on the mystery of iniquity is one of the greatest rhymes ever written. I put it right under this rhyme. And above this rhyme is, there's a few from the Teacher. This is what inspired the Teacher too, though. Melly Mel's rhyme. That was one of his inspirations, early inspirations. Melly Mel, he'll tell you that all the time. All right, now listen to this rhyme right here from Melly Mel. See how prophetic this is. This is one of the most influential rhymes in my personal rhyming. It goes like this. It goes, remember, this is Beat Street Breakdown. This is the second verse on the Beat Street Breakdown. The first one is dope, but this one is just where he goes all in. And this is where it becomes prophecy here. You'll see that. A newspaper burns in the sand, and the headlines say, man destroys man. Extra, extra, read all the bad news on the war of peace, then everybody would lose. The rise and fall of the last great empire, the sound of the whole world caught on fire. The ruthless struggle, the desperate gamble, the game that left the whole world in shambles. The cheats, the lies, the alibis, and the foolish attempt to conquer the skies. Lost in space, and what is it worth? The president just forgot about Earth, spending multi-billions and maybe even trillions. The cost of weapons ran into the zillions. There's gold in the street, and there's diamonds under feet, and the children in Africa don't even eat. Flies on their faces, they living like mice, and the house even make the ghetto look nice, huh? The water tastes funny, it's forever too sunny, and they work all month and don't make no money. A fight for power, a nuclear shower, a people shout out in the darkest hour. A sight unseen and voices unheard, and finally the bomb gets the last word. Christians killed Muslims, and Germans killed Jews, and everybody's bodies were used and abused, huh? Minds are poisoned and souls are polluted. Superiority complex is deep-rooted. Allegiance and license, and people got prices. Egomaniacs control the self-righteous. Nothing is sacred and nothing is pure, so the revelation of death is our cure. Hitler and Caesar, Custer and Reagan, Napoleon, Castro, Mussolini and Genghis Khan, and the Shah of Iran. Men spilled the blood of the weaker mind. The people in terror, the leaders made an error, and now they can't even look in the mirror. Because we got to suffer while things get rougher, and that's the reason why we got to get tougher. So learn from the past and work for the future, and don't be a slave to no computer. Because the children of man inherits the land, and the future of the world is in your hand. Yo. When he said Hitler and Caesar, Custer and Reagan, Ronald Reagan was in office. That was shocking. He just compared Ronald Reagan in a song that you could hear to Hitler, Caesar, Custer, Napoleon, Mussolini, Castro, Genghis Khan, and the Shah of Iran, calling them all out. And this last line here. So we learn from the past and work for the future, and don't be a slave to no computer. What was Melly Mel seeing when he wrote that rhyme back in the late 70s and early 80s? What was he seeing? What was he seeing right there? That line right there. So learn from the past and work for the future, and don't be a slave to no computer. That has been in my subconscious, playing over and over again for the last 35 years. Because the children of man inherits the land, and the future of the world is in your hand. It's in your hand. The future of the world is in your hand. Learn from the past and work towards the future. And don't be a slave to no computer. That's hip hop. The last of the human skills. I'm glad that came through right there. I was wondering what I was going to read from this week. I'm going to read from the Gospel of Hip Hop. It's going to be a little longer video than I usually make because I want to talk about appreciation. And I want to talk about really, see that right there, my appreciation for Melly Mel. Back in the early 80s, that like when that came out, that was before like some of the more popular pop bands got conscious a little bit later on, like U2 started becoming, they were a deep band, but they became more conscious as they heard hip hop, Trust and Believe, especially when they came to the United States. Bands like Midnight Oil, they became very conscious and outspoken. And I know I'm forgetting a ton of bands here because I wasn't really thinking about this week, but that rhyme right there was so far ahead of its time. I didn't hear nothing like that until My Philosophy came out, you know. And maybe now as I'm older, 4 or 5 years span of time between, doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're young, you know, when you're young and there's a span of time, there's this block of time between finding one conscious rhyme and then, I mean, all that time goes by. And I mean, Run DMC had a couple joints, you know, talking, you know, some awareness in them, but nothing like that Melly Mel rhyme until I heard KRS-One, until I heard The Teacher. And on By Any Means Necessary, it was just, you know, all of a sudden that woke up, you know. And, oh, and Public Enemy on, but even Public Enemy, that was protest music. I was thinking about this, right? This week came up with, and I want to, those who were around then, this is for us as a remembrance, but for you youngsters out there, 20-year-olds, go listen to Fight the Power. Watch the video that Spike Lee directed for Fight the Power from Public Enemy. Like, that was on alternative rock radio. That was on MTV. That was on movies that we saw as kids. Fight the Power was a hit record that people knew. I remember a teacher at school saying, "Fight the power." And we all laughed. We were laughing, like, how did he know? We got to fight the powers that be. Like, that spirit of hip hop, like, you don't know how bad you're missing it until you've experienced it. And I envy, I don't envy those who never experienced that power of music in its real time while that Chuck D voice is booming out, "Fight the powers that be," and that video's going, and that song is a major hit record, to really be thinking like, yo, we got to fight the powers that be. So in my mind, those powers that be is the same ones Melly Mel is warning us about. The Hitlers, the Mussolinis, even the Ronald Reagans and the George Bushes, which led to the so-called Illuminati, learning about them, learning about the so-called New World Order, and also the agenda of learn from the past and look to the future and don't be a slave to no computer. Throw that together, we got to fight the powers that be, okay? Throw that together with I think very deeply now. I think very deeply. So you start putting these pieces together, and the mind starts creating an identity, a sight. This is the hip-hop consciousness. It starts creating a sight that we begin seeing in our outer environment. And the kids that I was friends with were the kids who listened to rap and dug rap music. And it was like, that's, even as a young kid, I went to a school that was multi-ethnicities, you know, as they would say. It was all, everybody's a human race, right? But, so I was hanging out as a kid with so-called Mexicans, with so-called black kids, with so-called Asian kids, with other so-called white kids. I was hanging out with a mishmash of people. I was hanging out with punk rockers and even, you know, like the metalheads, the stoners, the burnouts, the ones listening to Metallica. And then so I had just all these influences from different groups of people. And it was always groups like Public Enemy. The punk rockers loved Public Enemy, right? And KRS-One. And it was, and the skaters loved Beastie Boys. Go figure. No surprise there. And Run DMC and Houdini, like when we were skating as kids. So there was like this, it's like effortless transition as I'm growing up through hip hop music and through rap music. And my best friends are those who listen to it with me. And I don't even know that like, oh, this is hip hop culture. This is just a way of being. And I'm way out in the middle of nowhere, supposedly. I'm out in the middle of the desert, supposedly. I'm out in the middle where I didn't even see anybody rapping until I was like 18 or 19. Like we weren't rapping at school. Kids were still breakdancing at school, b-boys and, dancing. And then as I got a little older, I never heard somebody rap. Well, the guy who taught me how to graffiti, he could spit the raps of other artists, but I never heard like an original rapper, never saw a show until I was a little older. And by older, I mean like 18, 19, 20, like having the license and getting to venture out into the city and go, to concerts and things like that. And let me tell you something, like the difference between then and this is just something that we do. This is just how we listen to music. This is how we think. This is just the philosophy on life. And then when Teacher put out I Got Next, boom. That was the next like major turning point for my appreciation for hip hop this week. The I Got Next album, 1998. The I Got Next album, from front to back, like it opens up with hip hop being a culture. I had never heard that spoken before. Like I knew who Afrika Bambaataa and Zulu Nation was from the music, but I didn't know nothing about the movement. That wasn't around me. I didn't know about that. So this is 1998. I'm 25. Learning that hip hop is a culture and learning that that's been my culture my whole life, but I just didn't know that's what it was called or that's what it was. By the time I'm 25, I had been working full time. Like I jumped out of high school, and once I learned that I could make money by working hard at a job and moving up, I didn't worry about too much stuff other than just making money and making money. I used to work all the overtime I could. I used to drive dope cars, and I used to just money in the bank, And then on my free time, I got in a punk rock band with my brother. And, but it was smoking weed, listening to hip hop, listening to all kinds of music, but hip hop being like the main one that me and my two best friends would gravitate towards and really, really get intricate with it. Like, what's Rakim talking about here? So when I Got Next came out, it was like this transitionary part of my life. I heard like hip hop is a culture. I was like, oh yeah, word right away. I saw in the back of the book there was a hip hop census. I wrote that up. He starts talking about we are the ones prophesied to return. My main concern is for all of you to live and learn. Yes, through the message I give and send, my friend, this age is coming to an end. Not the world, but the age is ending. Listen to the astrological message I'm sending. Truth is truth, whether or not you like me. We are living now in the age of Pisces, but Pisces is over at the year 2000 when the Son of God changes his housing, enters the age of Aquarius. So I heard that rhyme at the end of that, smoking weed, going up camping, and I was like, yo, blew my mind open. Because all of a sudden, there's this new sight of Christianity. There's this new idea of what culture is. The big brother watching over you is a lie, you see. Hip hop can build its own secret society. Seeing like a gospel of hip hop, there was a gospel of hip hop in that. He had like this computer image of a gospel of hip hop, registering for the temple of hip hop, and really not knowing anything about it other than that album dropped. And I was just like, I have all the KRS-One albums up to that time, but that one I Got Next was a whole other level of enlightenment, of awakening, of consciousnness. So I got that album, and around 2000, the Sneak Attack came out. He went really quiet for a couple years there. Those who know the history, he took a job at Warner Brothers for a while as an executive to sign artists, as a talent executive signing artists. Most people don't know that about the teacher. He was an executive at Warner Brothers. And so he was living this life of having, different than his rap life. And then he heard the voice of God again. And he quit all of that, and he wrote the next album, The Sneak Attack, which to me is the greatest hip-hop album of all time. There's no greater hip-hop album than Sneak Attack. From front to back, it is a perfect album. Front to back, perfect album all the way through. From every lyric, every beat, every chorus, every hook, every concept, everything, a perfect album. And that's where he started talking about the elements of hip hop. Don't just hear the word of God, be the word of God. You're not just doing hip hop, you are hip hop. Now that was I Got Next, but then it was 2 years later, 3 years later, we get the next lesson. Because remember, I'm not on the internet. There's internet and dial-up and stuff like that back then, but I'm not on the internet. I'm not getting these lessons. I'm not knowing that this is happening. So I got the Sneak Attack. And then Spiritual Minded dropped after that. Spiritual Minded, another groundbreaking album, in that it changed the consciousness of the way that we viewed religion in hip hop. And specific, not just spirituality, the spirituality is there, but that hip hop has ideas about religion that you won't hear from any other institution. So I'm here to teach on that, and that changed my life too. I had to get back. I wanted to get to my people. And that right there is Spiritual Minded, led all the way up. I want to say the next one after Spiritual Minded was Keep Right. And then that Keep Right just came out. And then I was able to enter into the physical temple of hip hop and meet the teacher and begin my apprenticeship. Now, I say this often, that those albums from Boogie Down Productions and KRS-One specifically, not just all of hip-hop, but just specifically from the teacher, that was my gospel of hip-hop before the gospel of hip-hop came out. He said on, I think it was Edutainment, he said, beware your subconscious magnet from attracting havoc. Or he said, beware how you use your subconscious magnet to attract from attracting havoc. I don't know, the line slips me off. But he talks about the subconscious magnet from pulling in havoc. And I was like, we have a subconscious magnet? What does that even mean? But I realized then that if I don't want to be pulled over by the police, I should have my subconscious magnet of being invisible to the police. I'm invisible. I'm going to be aware what my subconscious magnet is thinking, because I'm learning about Zen. I've learned about Zen at this time and the subconscious mind a little bit through Bruce Lee, but more the Tao, but not knowing that it's called the subconscious mind, but then seeing that stillness, that state of mind that we're not always aware of, but that's working, that the Tao's talking about, that's the subconscious magnet. And if that can pull in havoc, maybe I should be aware of what I'm attracting into my life. This was before The Secret came out and anybody was talking about publicly or on the mainstream or a big level, the so-called law of attraction. I mean, these are the lessons I'm getting from the teacher early on. So that appreciation for the culture led to the teacher, led to the temple, led to this. And when I joined the Temple of Hip Hop back in 2005, officially, like January 9th, 2005, I joined it spiritually in 1998 when I first heard about it. So 7 years, right? I got my computer, found out about the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace, found out about the Temple of Hip Hop, found the website, found that there were some pages of the Gospel of Hip Hop. I'm picking up these little pieces, these breadcrumbs. I'm picking up this trail all along until I'm face to face with the teacher, and he's saying, you see this, you get this, let's go on this journey together. You're invited. And I become his apprentice. And so in 2005, I believe, yes, I know, for 2005, Hip Hop Appreciation Week was freedom. And so that year, as teacher's assistant, he's like, Zin, we got to make Hip Hop Appreciation Week bigger and better. You need to talk, when we're out on tour, you need to talk about it. You need to share this with people. Here's a write-up on freedom. He dictated the little write-up for freedom to me. I typed it out. He was showing me how to use the spacers, how to compose letters. Like he was teaching me all these like things that I didn't even know I was going to learn. And so, you know, I'm on the phone calling people, and people are doing Hip Hop Appreciation Week events, and we're like, every third week in May. That was on Sneak Attack 2, on the Sneak Attack album that, talks about Hip Hop Appreciation Week and Hip Hop History Month. Like, you really got to go back and know your history. And if you really want to know your history of the Temple of Hip Hop, you got to go back all the way to Criminal Minded and work your way forward. But starting specifically with I Got Next, and then from I Got Next to Sneak Attack. Look at those two albums specifically this week, because those are the seeds that are being planted all over the world that people are hearing and talking about and speaking about. So Hip Hop Appreciation Week, although it's been a thing up to this point, since 98, it's a thing going on. It's starting to hit by the time 2005 is around, it's already becoming a thing, and we've got to just keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger, because we're talking to people who are hip hop, or people in the public who are debating and saying hip hop's not a culture. You guys are trying to take over hip hop. You guys are a cult. You guys are wrong. And that sounds foolish now to anybody in 2022 if they say hip hop's not a culture. Like you just look stupid if you say that. But back in 2005, it was bold with it. We're out on tour, we were passing out flyers for Hip Hop Appreciation Week, and the guy's like, let me get one of those. And he grabs the flyer, and he crumbles it up. He's like, I fucking hate hip hop, and he smashes the flyer. And big up to Kid One. He goes, yo, you may hate hip hop, but hip hop loves you, brother. And we just kept walking. It was funny. It was at this college, and this dude was just like, I hate hip hop, and smashed it. And kids said, yo, hip hop loves you. And we had a good laugh about that. And then we kept saying, yo, hip hop loves you. But those early times, that ministry work that we were doing, there was emails. I knew about emails. I didn't get onto Facebook until 2010. I didn't even know about no Facebook. I guess MySpace was around back then, so MySpace is trickling in. But people are still main form of communication is more person to person, event to event. Flyer. We'd pass out flyers wherever we'd go about Hip Hop Appreciation Week, and then we'd be in contact on the phone or through email specifically about Hip Hop Appreciation Week. And then that grew into 2010. We did the Order track, a track called Order, which was like people from all over the world sent their vocals in. We made a track called Order. And, that was when I was first jumping on. I got a video on YouTube for Order. It's funny seeing me talk publicly like that for the first time back in 2010, and just seeing that journey. And we hit the resistance against Hip Hop Appreciation Week, but now here it is, 2022, and it's bigger and better than ever. It's celebrated all over the world. Now go way back to when Melly Mel is saying, learn from the past and work towards the future, and don't be a slave to no computer. See, all I knew was that lyric. All I knew was that line. I didn't know the Zulu Nation and the Infinity Lessons and, breaking MCing, graffiti art DJing, and knowledge and wisdom, the 5 elements of Zulu Nation. I didn't know nothing about that. I didn't know about the meeting of the minds that had taken place, or that the teacher was taking notes in the early 90s for what would eventually become the gospel of hip hop. I didn't know about Kool Herc, Cindy Campbell, Cedric and Cedar, but I knew about the Melly Mel lines. And that little breadcrumbs led me back to the whole culture in and of itself, to a point where I got to be a defender of the temple of hip hop. I got to be a defender of the culture. I loved being made fun of. I talked about this a few weeks ago. People would make fun of me all the time thinking I was some kind of joke or something. And then they found out, like Rakim says, I ain't no joke. Like, I ain't no joke, homie. Like, I'm real. I'm real about this. This is in my soul and in my spirit. This is a love that I feel, and this is an appreciation that I have for hip hop. That's this, like, the only thing that I can call mine. People can take away, like I have my ex-wife take my kids from me. People can take away kids. People can break trust. People can break relationships. People can lie about you. People can cheat you. People can make up all kinds of things about you. The New World Order can do whatever it wants and try whatever it wants, but one thing it does not have. It does not have the true spirit of hip-hop within itself. And nobody can take that true spirit of hip-hop out of me. Nobody. Why? Because it's a living essence. It's the spirit. When I say I am hip-hop, every cell of my body, every water structure molecule of my body reverberates with I am hip-hop and knows I am hip-hop. I am intelligent movement. I am hip to my hop. And where my appreciation comes in is because I grew up, hip-hop was my teacher. Bruce Lee was my teacher. Bruce Lee is hip-hop. Martin Luther King was my teacher. Martin Luther King is hip-hop. I'll even go as far as to say Jesus Christ is hip-hop. So when I'm growing up in the suburban wasteland of Antioch, California, which is nothing but hood, so much drug use and meth and murder and debauchery. But you know, I lived in a neighborhood where we all put on a clean smile, you know, put on our Sunday best every Sunday. Went to work for the man all week. I didn't have no elders in my life looking out for me. I had a couple cool people in my life, and when I say that, my mom was always looking out for me as a mother does, as a loving mother does for her child. My mom always looked out for me, even when she didn't understand me. Whenever she saw me going through a hard time, she always did her best to help her wild son stay on the path of righteousness, stay on the right path. But when it came to life advice, like usable life advice, I wasn't getting that from no pastor in no church, from no elder in no church. I wasn't getting that from no school teacher. I wasn't getting that from no employer. It wasn't until I met the teacher that I finally had somebody who was older than me say, yo, my dude, here's what you should do with your life. Here's what's possible with your life with belief in yourself, with this sight. Let me teach you and show you how you can speak your reality into existence. Let me show you. He used to tell me, Zin Uru, just remember this. I say, what, teacher? And he say, Zin Uru, remember this. Nobody can fire you and nobody can kick your ass. What else do you need? I was like, word up. Word. And then he told me, he says, Zin, no matter how many haters I have, when I grab the mic, they all shut up because they can't say nothing when I grab the mic. So I learned that same thing. I was like, if I can learn to rhyme at a high level and I can say some shit that nobody else can say in a way that nobody else can say it, and my tracks are dope, nobody can say nothing after that. It was interesting too because when I was with the teacher and I was out doing, people weren't really listening to me other than they were listening to what the teacher was saying through me. But I was kind of like, people looked at me like, oh, you're just his errand boy. You're just his spokesman. You're just whatever. I'm like, no, I'm his student. I'm his apprentice. And y'all is jealous. And so it wasn't until I made my track with Busy Bee, The Promised Land, that all of a sudden the authority came with that. And you should keep that in mind too. This is the appreciation for hip hop. I appreciated hip hop so much that I made a song about the father of hip hop, Cool G.J. Herc. And hip hop being the promised land was my first track. And it was so dope. The first version I made, Busy Bee heard it and asked if he could jump on the track. Actually asked me, Zin, how come you didn't put me on that track? To me, it was the greatest honor of my life. Busy Bee saying, how come you didn't put me on that track? I was like, I don't know, B, let's do it. And when Busy Bee finally, recorded that track with me, it's like I cherished that moment. I cherished that gift because it put me even, like Busy Bee's like right there pre-Melly Mel, right there with Melly Mel coming up. First solo MC, Chief Rocker, Busy Bee. Like first battle MC. Like he took me and tapped my root into the original root through the Temple of Hip Hop, through him being on tour with the teacher. Really, the Temple of Hip Hop's taken my root back there so much so that, let's even go this, as my branches are growing, Busy Bee pollinates those branches with real hip hop. And this is a journey of faith. And this is also something very interesting because the teacher used to say to us early on, and he said this and it stuck with me, you don't really know history until you're in history. And most people, he said, don't know that they're in history while they're in history. Like imagine like John Lennon's friends or Bob Marley's friends. They didn't, maybe a couple of them knew, hey, this guy might become something, but they didn't know he was going to become Bob Marley, one of the greatest prophets of all time. They didn't know that. Imagine, Bruce Lee's friends growing up and that he's playing with or whatever. Did they know that? Do they know? But these are historical figures that people know later on. And so I would be like, and events too, like people, like how many people didn't go to the I Have a Dream speech? How many people didn't have that moment and that time to go to the I Have a Dream speech? So getting put into that historical perspective and then coming up all the way over here to where it is now in 2022, I could speak I've spoken for almost, this is like episode 63. This is 63 weeks of speaking, over like a year and a half of speaking about hip hop weekly, having something new to say weekly. And it's not, I do a lot of studying. I've been doing a lot of studying and character development and this, that, and the other, but it comes from something deeper than that. People study all the time and can't talk about what they studied week in and week out to everyone they talk. That's all I talk about is hip hop to everybody. Like every conversation I have with everybody involves hip hop, if not for the majority of the conversation, to some high degree or high level of the conversation. Why? Because it's a fixed condition. It's who I am. It's what I am. How can I not talk about it and be it? And I'm only saying this because teacher took the time to tell me about it, so I'm taking the time to tell you all about it. If he didn't tell me, I wouldn't have known. And he's out there telling everybody right now. And those with eyes to hear, eyes to hear and ears to see, which is actually the real original, but those with eyes to see and ears to hear, take heed of that. How great can you be? What great thing can you do? How can you promote and push forward to where something, part of a movement that in 2022 is just known and established? But it's not known and established to its full extent. There is a lot of growth to do. This is just the planting seed phase. The spring, we're starting to see the first sprouts of the new nation actually growing up. We're starting to see the first early prophecies fulfilled. That's all we're seeing right now. And how do you grow the garden? You appreciate the garden by watering the garden, by preserving the garden, by developing the garden, by protecting the garden, by loving and nurturing and developing the garden. Let's look up here. I'm going to put, let's put appreciate and appreciation, because this feels like a good time to talk about this. Appreciate being the root word of appreciation. Appreciate being the root word of appreciation. Appreciate. To recognize the quality, significance, or magnitude of. So when we appreciate hip hop, we say to ourselves,
How do you preserve hip-hop? By preserving the hip-hoppa. How do you preserve the hip-hoppa? You appreciate the hip-hoppa. We'll look at preservation next week or the week after. We should be looking at preservation too this week, but this is how. So when we say, how do we preserve hip-hop? By preserving the hip-hoppa. This is a key to preservation. You are the hip-hoppa. You recognize the quality, significance, or magnitude of hip-hop. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? See, this is right here. Appreciated their freedom. Hip-hop is the promised land. Hip-hop offers freedom. There's freedom in hip-hop. To recognize the quality, significance, or magnitude of hip-hop. Definition number 2, to be fully aware of or sensitive to realize. Health, love, awareness, and wealth. There's the awareness right there of the H law. Hip means to know. It's a form of intelligence. To be hip is to be up-to-date and relevant. That's awareness. To be fully aware of or sensitive to. Are you sensitive to hip-hop? This one right here. So much truth here. To be thankful of or show great gratitude for. Or to be thankful of or show gratitude for. Are you thankful of hip-hop? Do you show gratitude to hip-hop? And the hip-hop, you're hip-hop. I am hip-hop. Do you appreciate and show gratitude towards yourself? Are you thankful to yourself? Do you recognize the quality and significance of magnitude of you? To admire greatly, to value. To admire greatly, to value. Appreciate. Now this one right here. To raise in value or price, especially over time. Now to raise in value or price. What's the price you place on your life? Our lives are priceless. There's no price we can place on our life, but people do it all the time. I think $20 an hour is the price for my life. My first job was $4.25 an hour. That was the price for my life at the time. I'll tell you that $4.25 actually went further than 20 bucks does nowadays. Appreciation Week. And look at this. Appreciation. For those who know what the shem is, it's right there. Recognition of the quality, value, significance, or magnitude of people and things. Well, thoughts become things. Recognition of the quality, value, significance, or magnitude. What is the quality, value, significance, and magnitude of hip-hop in your life for real? Are you a hip-hopper who just happens to have a job right now? Or are you the job who just happens to do a little bit of hip-hop on the side? Which one is it? It's a matter of perspective. Shift your perspective and your environment will change. A lot of you are learning that this week during Hip Hop Appreciation Week, who have the great fortune of being in New Jersey with the teacher. Don't take any of that time for granted. Every moment, savor every moment of it. This is your place in history. Her story, our story, our story. This is your space and place in hip-hop. This is what gives you not only the ability to teach, but the authority to inspire. Let your voice ring out and inspire others to see themselves with value, quality, significance, and the magnitude of who we can actually be and are. Definition number 2, a judgment or opinion, especially a favorable one. A judgment or opinion, especially a favorable one. That's appreciation, is a favorable opinion and a judgment. I love hip hop so much, and hip hop loves me so much. An expression of gratitude. That's definition number 3. An expression of gratitude. Just being thankful, being grateful. Wherever you're at, be grateful right now. Due to family circumstances, being that they are, my dad's physical condition and me being one of his main caretakers between him and my mother right now. He can't even walk. We have to lift him and move him all over. But he took care of me as a kid, you know. As a child, he took care of me. As rough and tough as he was, he did his duty as a dad. And I feel it's my duty to return that favor. And so this is just the time I'm not able to go and be in New Jersey. But you better believe that I am so grateful for how my life is playing out this very moment and this very week. These days, this Hip Hop Appreciation Week, I am so grateful for it. I'm so grateful to be exactly who I am and where I am. Because I appreciate and love God, who guides my direction, who's guided me and led me to each of those little crumbs that I picked up along the way that led me back home to the promised land, to Hip-Hopia, to the temple of hip-hop, to learn and to inspire and to be inspired. Definition number 4, awareness or delicate perception, especially of aesthetic qualities or values. You know, that's appreciation for like when I read from that Melly Mel rhyme. Awareness or delicate perception, especially of aesthetic qualities or values. A rise in value or price, especially over time. A rise in value, especially over time. I probably should have done value this week too, but time constraints. Value, but we know what value is. When we value ourselves, when we appreciate ourselves, we increase our value. That's our true wealth. Our character is our character. When we increase the strength of our character, we add value to ourselves. And not only do we add value to ourselves, we add value to those around us. So make sure that those who are around you, as you're valuing yourself, don't devalue you, don't depreciate you. This is one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn, is make sure that those people around you and that you're speaking with and interacting with are adding value to your life, that they appreciate you the same way that you appreciate them and add value to their lives. And that's why I say it's only hip-hop that I'm talking on the daily with people, because when we're talking hip-hop, we're adding value to our lives. This is just metaphysics and physics. This is just how creation works. This is how everybody's doing it, but they don't have the sight to know. And not everybody should have the sight to know. Not everybody is hip-hop. Not everything is hip-hop. There has to be, to know what is right, you have to know what is wrong. To know what is true, you have to know what is false. To know what is dark, you have to know the light, you have to know the dark, this, that, and the other. So to know hip-hop, you have to also know what's not hip-hop. Mainstream media is not hip-hop. MTV is not hip-hop. BET is not hip-hop. Hot 97 is not hip-hop. The mainstream media, the mainstream music industry, the rap music industry is not hip-hop. I am hip-hop. You are hip-hop. That's what hip-hop is. And hip-hop is a consciousness. It's not even a physical, tangible thing when you really get down to it. It becomes a physical, tangible thing when it's the lowercase HIP dash lowercase HOP. That little hip-hop, that right there is when you take a CD and put your hip-hop or a DVD or your jacket that you painted or the artwork that you made on the wall that you get. That's that little hip-hop right there. But the consciousness,
That's how come nobody can take it away from you, because you are it. You are the consciousness. Nobody can take your hip hop consciousness away from you. Only you can allow it to go dormant or go back to sleep, and only you can awaken it. Well, they're really not only you. God will awaken it, but you have to keep it awake. When God wakes you up, you got to stay awake. Don't play games with your life and dibble-dabble in this and that. I've seen too many people dibble-dabble in hip-hop, and they never got to be like the expression that God created them to be, and that's okay. I ain't judging nobody. But I know for myself, going back to the guy who, was working full-time as a landscaper, I know how weak I was. And I was a very strong person. I was picking up boulders to work. I was chopping down trees and breaking firewood and doing all kinds of stuff. And I was strong. So my willpower to get up every day was strong. But I didn't know how to be part of a movement and stand up to corruption. I didn't know how to deal with my depression because I didn't have a form of expression. Because once I got into hip-hop as culture, capital H, lowercase I, lowercase p, space, capital H, lowercase o, lowercase p, hip-hop is culture, and the 9 elements, I started practicing my element of emceeing, all of a sudden I had a form of expression to express my rhymes, what I was seeing in the world, and that started healing my soul. And the healing of my soul led me to Theta. Led me to Apollo and the Tree of Life. Led me to healing. Led me back to God. That soul healing by being able to spit a rhyme and increase my confidence and be part of something bigger than me led me to the greatest things that I didn't even know existed until God showed me and led me to those places. And this is why I say it's better to surrender to God than try and create your reality through the law of attraction and just map out every little thing in your life. If you limit your life to what you know, you'll be limited to what you know. Because what you don't know is far greater and far more vast than what you do know. So when we surrender to God and know that God is guiding our direction, God can lead, I surrendered to God and He led me right to the doorstep of the teacher. I surrendered to God and I met Dove and learned Theta healing. I surrendered to God and met Apollo and learned about the Tree of Life. All of this is surrender to God. And when I said I am hip-hop, that opened the doors to all these other relationships that if I was just the landscaper guy back in the day, I would not have discovered or been a part of, or had the honor of being a part of these major life events that weren't really for me. They were because they brought me healing. But the greatest gift for me is to know that people who I've been counseling for years are able to go and meet the teacher face to face for the first time as the temple of hip hop. So God leads us to things and to places and events really for our benefit, but if it's really from God, it will benefit others when you speak about it, when you pass it on. When you can say, my dude, my brother, you know what? You need an encouraging word right here. Let me help you right here. And when you do that for others, others will do that for you. This is how culture is built. This is how society is made. This is how truth is manifest. This is the only freedom that we will ever know. That's where true freedom comes in, when we create for ourselves, or really God creates through us, because now we've tuned back into God and our creative powers, and that we are creating, God's really just creating all of this through us. And when we're aware of it, we become the ultimate helpers, the ultimate servers of God. And if God needs your help, what does that make you? God, the creator of all that is, needs your help. What does that say about you? I don't know what everybody else is preaching. I don't know what everybody else is teaching. But I do know what I'm saying. And I do know this works. It always works. And it may get lonely. It may get desperate. It may seem dark. All of that is for our inner strength. All of that is to build a character in you that is imperturbable. When the storms of life hit, you've been prepared, and your body, your consciousness, your awareness becomes a shelter. in and of itself. So while the world is going crazy, you're living your purpose. You're living the truth. You're creating something. The world can say, oh, you have to do this, but you're creating something that God is saying, no, this is what you could be doing, and this is what you're capable of. Now go forward and do it. Build a new nation. Become hip-hop. Build hip-hopia. Do it. But God, we don't know. You have God. God is with us. What else do we need? I don't know how many times I'd leave on tour with $100 in my pocket and go travel the world. All I know, I can name a whole bunch of people and little events and little things that provided. But for that long of a sustaining, it was always God providing. Always God providing. For all of us. God will provide for you. Walk in God. Know that God is with you. And the knowing that God is with you is by being and saying, oh man, it doesn't seem like God is with me. And then all of a sudden, God's right there with you after you get through it. After you get through the fear. After you get through the tribulation. But most people don't want to go through that. Most people want to deal with that. Why? Because it's scary. It's not for everybody. Not everybody's going to make it. Not everybody's cut out for this. Be real with yourself. Not everybody's cut out for this. Not everybody's cut out to be a Minista Zin Uru. Not everybody's cut out to be Martin Luther King. There's only one Martin Luther King. There's only one KRS-One. There's only one Bruce Lee. There's only one Zin Uru. The other people can call themselves Zin Uru, but there's only one me. There's only one you. Z-I-N-U-R-U. There's only one you. That's why we put the one at the end. You could call me Zin One. That's my temple name. Zin One. Why? Because Zin did win. I won. This is what winning looks like to me, because everything is spiritual. This is what winning feels like. I feel at home wherever I stand. My name's Zin Uru means the promised land because I feel at home wherever I stand. To walk out in the world with no fear, to move about in the world with no fear. What else is there? Let's read from the Gospel of Hip Hop tonight. This will be our closing. It's actually a long read. I want to just read the love. I'll put it up here on the screen. I was thinking about what to read this week, and I had some, just a whole bunch of things, and then I just thought, I really want to just read the love. I just want to put this out there historically. Zin Uru reading the love from the Gospel of Hip Hop. So I just wanted to read this. It's 5 or 6 pages. I think it's 9 pages, really. But, so just, sit back. I'm going to comment a little bit on it, but I really just want the words to speak for themselves, and really more than the words, just the spirit that's coming through these pages. Before and beyond this is, of course, from the love in the Gospel of Hip Hop, written by the teacher, KRS-One, presented to the Temple of Hip Hop. And just a reminder that I, Zin Uru, am a recognized intellectual and spiritual contributor in the Gospel of Hip Hop, of the Gospel of Hip Hop. The love. Before and beyond the collective history of our recording contracts, platinum sales awards, and tour dates, we have been the direct recipients of a saving force, a spiritual form of intelligence which can only be described as love. But how soon did we forget who fed us when we were hungry, who taught us when we were ignorant, who clothed us when we were naked, who sheltered us when we were houseless. We were quick to pray for what we wanted in our time of need, but after we were out of the danger or satisfied in some way, we forgot that we've just prayed to something that actually responded. The question is, how serious are you about God? Many people believe in God, but only a tiny few actually appreciate God and show it with a life dedicated to union with God. How soon did we forget how helpless and vulnerable we were before the threats of our enemies were miraculously dealt with? How can we forget? Such forgetfulness is almost always reminded by a return to hunger and powerlessness. Now be mindful here, Hip Hoppa.
when God saves you, stay the course. I see so many people, when God saves them and rescue them, just get comfortable and cocky immediately and go right back and have to be, and they lose everything that God just, they go right back into the sea that God just saved them from drowning in. That's immaturity. We have to be more mature than that, and we are more mature than that. Miracles happen every day, all day. But most people don't expect them, so they don't even see them or experience them. Strange, kooky type events go on all the time, and people simply disregard them as coincidence, or they ignore them altogether. Then they criticize their own spiritual experience as not real, childish, and or naive. And see, that's the key right there. Believe it. When you see the miracles in your life, believe that's a miracle. Know that it's a miracle. Appreciate the miracle. Most people cannot deal with the possible fact that what they are seeing is not all of what they are getting. That there is a deeper, faster, stronger reality that can actually override the mechanics of their own, that can actually override the mechanics of their known physical universe and its laws. That things might not actually be the way we think they are. For most people, such a revelation is indeed scary and not even to be discussed. But for a select few, such a revelation is inspiring and encourages such people to learn more, seek more, and live more. This is what this gospel of hip-hop is all about. It is about the restoration and further development of one's love for hip-hop, because it is through love that we learn of the deeper lessons regarding the nature of God. The gospel of hip-hop points the way to a spiritually lived hip-hop life. However, love is the code that tells the universe that you can be trusted with information that must be lived in order to be learned. Know this: the universe thinks and responds to your thinking. And this is the essence of what hip-hop is for us. It is our relationship with divinity. See how come that should be underlined too with that highlight. Hip-hop is for us, and this is the essence of what hip-hop is for us. It is our relationship with divinity. Hip-hop is our relationship with divinity. I'll say it one more time. Hip-hop is our relationship with divinity. Hip-hop is what we are doing with our portion of God. When we are performing the role of a pimp, a hustler, drug dealer, stick-up kid, whore, murderer, etc., this is what we are doing with our portion of God, the love that has rescued us from self-destruction. When we are performing the role of teacher, minister, parent, volunteer, MC, etc., this is also what we are doing with our portion of God, the love that inspires us to self-create. For if hip-hop was created explicitly for self-destruction, then self-destruction would be fine, and we would thrive upon such a condition. But hip-hop was not created to self-destruct. It was created to self-create. Hip-hop, you don't stop. And this is how we know that its inspiration was of God. Hip-hop came from within us, yet we still had to learn it. In our early days, we felt the fullness of it, but still had to develop artistic techniques to express it in nature. Hip-hop came to us from within us. Know that. Hip-hop comes from within you. There's plenty of people who had access to the same breadcrumbs that I had, but it was within me. It was the sight within that led me to where it became and what it became for me. Hip-hop is the name of the love that rescued us from oppression. Hip-hop is the term given to the inner force that inspires us to self-create. This gospel is a tribute to the love that has saved us and brought us together under the title of hip-hop. And this is the message. Love is the message. This is what we originally did our artistic elements for. We did it for the love. That unspoken collective intelligence that is shared psychically by all who belong to the group. Those who belong to the group feel the love. Those who care for the group feel the love. Those who seek love feel the love. And it is this God that we serve. Without form, without name, without origin, the love is that saving force in the world many civilizations have written about and have called God for thousands of years. We have observed now that love is a divine activity, an intelligence unto itself that saves, rewards, inspires, and teaches all who are part of its group. Love is God, but love seems to also be selective. It thinks and judges. Many follow the tradition that God is love, and yes, such is the truth. But when you really begin to live out this statement, you find that it is more the fact that love is God. God is a term that makes love understandable to us. The term God is not anything unto itself, but what the term God describes is actually love and the activities of love. Yes, for many people, God is love. But for us, love has been our God. Love is what we have served, and it is love that has saved us. God is not above love. Love is God. Love is not from God. Love is the only God we have ever known. The term God is not above the term love, because without love, the term God has no meaning and ceases to exist, for it is love that defines God and empowers God to act. Love is the true God, and to love is God. For it is not God that governs and orders the universe, it is love. And it is not God that destroys the universe, it is the illusory absence of love. Look at all the destruction going on in the world, my nobility. That is the absence of love. All the war, all the hatred, all the manipulation, all the mind control, all of that is the absence of love. Therefore, let us return to our ancient understanding of God as an event of great love that operates as the universe itself. Let us return to our ancestral wisdom formed from the real experiences we have had with God, the love that has enlightened us. Before the kidnap, rape, theft, deception, and murder of our ancestors and grandparents, which forced upon us our modern day view and perception of God, we worshiped the power of love. We saw it, we felt it, and we expressed it towards one another, even to those who would eventually enslave our parents. Over many years, some of us would track its patterns and repeated behaviors in an effort to communicate and be more in harmony with such a being. Of all the virtues available to humanity, love is truly the God of them all. This gospel for hip-hop acknowledges the love that set us aside in the world and has made us hip-hop. This gospel acknowledges the grace bestowed upon hip-hop and hip-hoppers and urges the hip-hop community to rise to the promise God has made to us. And what is the promise God has made to us? The promise is that if we turn from our own ignorance and immaturity and seek the face of God, we shall experience that ancient blessing that topples the most powerful nations and establishes the nation that has repented and has obeyed. The promise is that if we ever dare to rise to our divinity, God promises to meet us there. Our divinity begins with the proper understanding of love and what it means to forgive and care for one another. See, this right here is the key. Forgive and care for one another. With this understanding, we learn that we can never really love God. We can only be love God towards each other. We have observed now that the way to experience God is to experience true love. And this is achieved not by receiving love, but by being love itself. Be love, my nobility. Such an approach to spiritual living begins one's understanding of hip-hop's spiritual life. And again, this has nothing to do with the spiritual concepts and experiences of other cultures far older than ours. For we have realized now that your culture is your religion. Right? Underline that, my nobility. For we have realized now your culture is your religion. And it is impossible for us hip-hoppers to have a relationship with God through a culture that is not inherently ours. Our culture is our direct connection to God. Our cultural life is the actual path that we must take to arrive at the presence and power of God. Much respect to all who seek the face of God. However, this gospel reflects the actual notes taken over a 14-year period with over 40 years of living hip-hop spiritually. Others may have discovered other truths, but this gospel documents the spiritual truths we as a hip-hop community have discovered at the birth of our civilization. These are the principles we must never forget. This is what it means for us to be and remain free, to take responsibility for ourselves, to be able to chart our own path toward the divine and make our own humble observations regarding spiritual, cultural, and political matters. Are we not free-thinking adults? Does God not speak to us as well? Well, let us begin acting as such, beginning with the documentation of what we have seen, heard, and felt regarding the activity of God for ourselves. This very video right here is documenting the love that I have seen, heard, and felt regarding the activity in my life, my nobility. For real. Let us as scholars and hip-hop citizens acknowledge the presence of the love that has saved us. With this gospel, let us proclaim our reconnection and trust for the love that has guided us this far. We respect the experiences older civilizations have had with God, but now it is time we experience God for ourselves. We no longer need an interpreter. Our culture is our religion, and our religion is our culture. Such a life is not for everyone, though. Hip-hop is alive. It is a thinking faculty of the universe itself, and it chooses who it shall reveal its secrets to. Those of us who have committed ourselves to observing the divine activities of love in human affairs have observed that the force that brought hip-hop into existence planned, protected, and nurtured us long before we knew we were being developed into hip-hop. Hip-hop started for us before we were aware of it. Look how God works, my nobility. Hip-hop has been God has been looking out for you before you were even aware of it. God has been looking out for us before we were even aware of it. Our observations show that divine love was the first act that got hip-hop started. Something cared about us. Something cared about our group. Long before we knew what we would become, a loving, caring force was at work, guiding our steps and molding our collective character to become hip-hop today. And we acknowledge the existence of this guiding force. It is to this force that we owe our existence. All praise, glory, and worship be to God, the love that has made us hip-hop. For us, it is love that produces the intentions of our minds, and we live and perceive our reality in God, the love that fights for us. And because nothing exists outside of love, including hip-hop, we accept our divinity as hip-hoppers as God's intention. For we know for sure that we belong to God, knowing that hip-hop itself has its source in eternal being, along with everything else in the known and unknown universe. Know this: hip-hop exists for divine reasons, and we have come into material existence as part of the divine order of the universe. We, hip-hop, are not a mistake. We are a manifestation of divine love. We are not here just to sing and dance. We are part of the divine order of things. Hip-hop is a product of human genius, clearly inspired by divine mind. Therefore, our first work as a young nation is to take the source of our being more seriously. And this is what the Temple of Hip-hop is all about. Here, we approach the being of hip-hop seriously. Announced in 1996, the Temple of Hip-Hop was formed to work in 3 phases: as an organization that protects, preserves, and promotes hip-hop culture; to open a cultural learning center and faculty for hip-hop culture featuring a museum exhibiting artifacts of hip-hop culture; to build a school recognizing and teaching hip-hop as the consciousness of our common culture; and 4, to create an authentic collaborative history for the culture. In short, the Temple of Hip-Hop is a hip-hop preservation society and ministry established to ensure the longevity and further development of traditional hip-hop in the world. our society is made up of exceptional hip-hoppers who are united in the cause for hip-hop's cultural, political, and spiritual expansion. However, again, the temple of hip-hop as well as the gospel of hip-hop are not intended for all people, even for those who are participating in hip-hop's culture and elements. Both the temple of hip-hop and its gospel attract those hip-hoppers who intuitively feel what is already presented in this first instrument and only need to be reminded of such truth in a culturally relevant way. For many, this gospel will be more of a confirmation than an education. Nothing that is taught here is actually new. However, the way in which it is taught is indeed new. Truth is truth, no matter where it comes from. It is only in the way that such truth is presented that gives the impression that what is being taught is somehow new or original. Much of what is taught here is ancient and timeless, and you will be able to find many of our principles in a variety of spiritual circles. But the reason for this gospel is that no one in my time seems to be speaking directly to the hip-hop community regarding its spiritual, cultural, and political development. And part of the reason for this, I suspect, is that no one can do this work for us. This work we must do for and by ourselves. This is that part of our journey where we must go it alone, blazing our own path towards union with the divine. Know this: revolution only works for those who participate in it. Tradition reveals its secrets and its powers only to those who are committed to the tradition. God speaks to those who speak to God. God listens to those who listen to God. The hip-hop life that we live can only really be experienced by true hip-hoppers committing to living hip-hop spiritually. Others can read this gospel, watch instructional hip-hop DVDs, even watch us imitating the effects of our real hip-hop lives. But ultimately, if you have not committed your entire being to the spiritual exploration of hip-hop, it will be a long time before you begin to experience the awareness of a spiritually lived hip-hop life. And this goes for anything, really. Even further, those who choose not to develop themselves or the craft which feeds them and their children become subject to the agendas of those who have. And on a more personal note, if the people around you are not participants in the revolution you have embarked upon, they will not be able to comprehend your ways or take part in the fruits of your success. They have not traveled your path, therefore they will not know your experience or perception. You can help them, you can give to them, you can assist them, you can teach them, you can love them, you can feed them, and you can advise them, but you cannot share your space and time with those who have not traveled your path or have not gained your experience. You cannot trust those who haven't traveled your path with the commitments your path requires. Your path is for you. Your blessings are for you. Your talents are uniquely yours. Yes, you are special. Everything else can be shared except the actual living of your own life experiences. These are authentically yours. You should keep a journal, such as your personal gospel. The love in your heart will want to unite with those who suffer and are in need. But please remember that everyone is where they are because of who they are. To truly save a person from their own illusions and hardships, it is not you that must unite with them. It is they who must unite with you. You uniting with the ignorant and the immature will only lead to your own suffering. Your natural humility and care for others will direct you to suffer with those who surround you, because without you, they would be lost. You know it and they know it, but they front like you ain't special and you agree. I ain't special. I'm not above anyone. What I do, anyone can do if they put their minds to it. All of this is simply not true. Because of the life that you have chosen and mastered, you are actually special. Yes, you are respectfully above everyone else who has not mastered even their own life, path, and purpose. And no, everyone cannot do what you do or even what you have done. Realize your uniqueness right now and let no one degrade you or lead you to doubt yourself with the experiences of their lives. Yes, you are special. You are hip hop. Your only challenge is your own belief in the existence of your own hip hop reality. Repent now. Your victory is closer to you than your hands. Prophet Farrakhan has already said to us, you are not conscious of how powerful God has made you in the wrong direction. But if you turn in the right direction, you will spark revolution all over the world. But it's not a revolution of bloodshed. The prophet continued, I can't be like Jonah anymore, and neither can you, hiding from your mission, running away from what your real assignment is, so the fish is swallowing you up. But when that boy learned to pray, he was spit up on dry land, and he said, I surrender, God. I've been fighting you, but I know it's time. I hope that you will say, I surrender, God. I know it's time. I can do better than what I'm doing. Money is not more important than the rise of a suffering people into the fulfillment of the promise of God. Nothing is more important than your people becoming truly free. And there it is. As Prophet Farrakhan just said, my nobility, nothing is more important than your people truly being free. Freedom begins within. And then it begins reverberating from within and goes without. You could say that another name for God is freedom. Love is freedom. God is freedom. Love is truth. God is truth. Truth is God. Freedom is God. Love is God. Our people have to be free, my nobility. The future is looking at us now and wondering, what are you doing for us? They're cheering us on. The past, our ancestors, is like, go, make this happen. The New World Order sat on the wall. The New World Order had a great fall. We are the true world order. We are hip hop. We are intelligent movement. We are the actual intelligent movement of the universe itself, of God itself, of love itself. What more do we need? When you know that you are the living breath of God, the empowerment that comes is therefore to empower our community, to empower our people, and let that be the focus. You don't come to hip-hop to, you become to hip-hop to become a better version of your old self. No, become a new creation. Be that new creation. Be that new thought springing forth. Yes, it may resemble those of the ancient, but be in the now. Be here now. Be in the present moment now, the gift of now. The power of the everlasting now, which is you, which is living and breathing and hearing this message right now. God is speaking to you. God is speaking through you. Let God reverberate. Let God resound to all the people of your life. And you will attract more and more like-minded people. And you will attract people and events and circumstances that you couldn't even imagine is possible. The miracles that God has waiting for you. And when you hit the miracle, acknowledge the miracle, but like the desire of the heart, or the pushing, the urging forward of the heart, is to become more and more like the miracle giver. I love the miracles. I appreciate and am grateful for the miracles. But those miracles are to say, there's this force, there's this intelligence, there's this God in your life that can perform miracles for you. What's more important than the miracle or the miracle giver? I want to be more like the miracle giver. And I know that becoming more and more like the miracle giver lasts long beyond this body and all the bodies. This ain't about money or anything else. This is about your spirit, your soul, your character, your faith. This is about hip hop, being hip to your hop. And not everyone can do it. And not everyone's supposed to do it. And it's actually very arrogant to put that onto everybody, that everybody's got to be just like you. That's the way of the world. That's the way of the colonizer. The colonizer's arrogance wants everybody to be just like them because they think they're so intelligent. They think, merging man with technology is the most intelligent thing, when it's literally the stupidest fucking thing ever created. Merging my flesh with computers is so fucking stupid and so anti-hip-hop that when we watch them fall, it's going to be sad and a relief at the same time. Because the future is us. The future is the living breath in the technology that God created, which is organic, crystalline, water-structured perfection. Don't let them fool you. All they want to do is school you. All they want to do is rule you. Don't let them fool you. No, my nobility, their time is over. Their time is past. Our time has always been. And we are reawakening to our being, to our nature. And it's perfect that it happened this way. Because if we didn't know what we were not, if we weren't aware of what we were not, we wouldn't be aware of what we are. So if I didn't, all those years of working for the slaving for the system, working for the man, depressed all the time, if I didn't know that version of myself, I wouldn't know this version of myself. So that's where the empowerment comes, no matter where you're at, whether you've been walking your purpose for the last 20 years, or whether you just started the path or you're just starting the path. It's perfect right here and right now for where you are at. Accept that. If you're depressed right now, you'll know your expression and your purpose because you remember what it was, what you were not. You're not depressed. You're not poor. You're not poverty. You're none of those things. You're not sickness, hatred, ignorance, and poverty. You're not those things. You are health, love, awareness, and wealth. How do you know that? Because you experience what you were not, to experience who you are and what you are. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't let nobody degrade you and bring you down or make fun of you. And when they do, look at it as this is how you're being empowered. When people want to argue with you and debate with you about what you should be doing with your life, but in your heart, in your mind, in your whole being, you know that love and you're following that love, follow that love. You ain't got to diss nobody. You ain't got to hurt nobody. You can be the love in that environment. They will actually see. Those who love you, they may criticize you. You stay on your path. You'll be surprised at who will walk that path at times with you and who will appreciate that you stuck to your life. Because in the future, if you do what they say, if you do what the naysayers say and do, if you do what the doubters and haters and naysayers say in your life, if you follow their path, as you get older, they'll apologize to you and say you should have followed the other path and that they were wrong for leading you down that path. That's a hard lesson to learn for people. I'm glad I don't have to learn it. I get to learn the lesson of like, yo, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy self-creating. It wasn't easy speaking my name, Zin Uru and Zin 1 and Minista and all of that into existence. It wasn't easy battling for Hip Hop Appreciation Week against those who were trying to sabotage us. It wasn't easy to be criticized and critiqued and made fun of. It wasn't easy. But here I am, and looking back over that time, it actually was easy because my future self was guiding that past self, that younger version of myself the whole way. And who was guiding me this whole time? God. Who's protecting me this whole time? God. Who had it figured out before I did? God. Who knows everything before we know? God. The love that saved us. There's no reason to doubt your God. There's no reason to doubt our God, my nobility. Live and be your hip-hop self. Appreciate your hip-hop self. Appreciation is love. That's what the name of this week's is. Appreciation is love. Appreciate yourself. Add value to yourself. Add value to those around you. Go forward this Hip-Hop Appreciation Week in health, love, awareness, and wealth. And there it is, my nobility, for real. There it is. Hey!